Welcome to Soulfire Wisdom with Kate Olson. As an evolving spirit and change adventure navigator, it is Kate's mission to empower and guide you on your path and inspire your truest passions. She will encourage you to share your gifts, speak your truth, and ignite your inner wisdom and purpose. She hopes to do so with a little humor and grace and her own soulfire passion. Kate talks with amazing guests who have embraced the pursuit and are fanning the flames of their own passion, purpose, and soulfire wisdom. Now here's your host, Kate.
Good afternoon. Welcome to Soulfire Wisdom and Tips, Tricks, and Triumphs Tuesday. So if this is your first time listening, I'm a hypnotherapist, Reiki Master, NLP practitioner, and a life coach. But I like to call myself a change adventure navigator because I love guiding people through obstacles and adversity to find their path, purpose, and peace. So this week, what I'm going to talk about for a minute or two here is a colleague of mine asked me this week if a client asked me for 5 things that could change their life, kind of profoundly in 21 days, what would I tell them? So what I told my colleague was that I would think about it and I would give those 5 things that I came up with on the show today. So what those 5 things are is the first thing in the morning, I would tell my client, the first thing when you wake up in the morning, smile. And that will do more for you than you can imagine. Even if that smile is not genuine, the more genuine it is, the more impact it'll have. But even if it isn't, it will have an impact. And next week, I'll talk about why that is. So the second thing that I would have the person do, both the first thing in the morning and the last thing at night, is think of 3 things that you're grateful for. Now, it doesn't have to be the same 3 things in the morning and at night, but it can be. So the third thing would be at any time during the day, take 10 minutes out and sit comfortably or lie down, whatever you feel inclined to do. Close your eyes and imagine what you would like your life to be like. It's kind of wide open on that. Try to make it as real as possible. See yourself there. See yourself doing what you'd want to be doing. Think about what it feels like, what your surroundings are. Just spend 10 minutes quietly imagining what you would like your life to be like. Fourth thing, at any time during the day, take another 10 minutes and go for a walk, do yoga, exercise, just anything that gets your body and blood flowing. If you're not able to do something like walking or yoga, you can even sit and do, chair exercises for 10 minutes. And then the last thing is do one act of kindness. It can be anything. It can be giving somebody a compliment. It can be telling somebody they did a good job. Or it can be, like buying somebody's coffee. Just do one act of kindness every day. And if you do those 5 things, I think you'll find that your mind and your attitude is in a different place. in 21 days. And I would give more things than that, but even if you just do those 5 things, I think you'll find you're in a different place. So we have a great show planned for today. My guest is Dara Wagner, and she is a Reiki Master Energy Healer, photographer, writer, and a creative sculptor of life. Dara has gone from the brink of suicide after decades of severe Crohn's disease and chronic PTSD to being cured and a life transformation through a combination of energy work and self-directed mindfulness practices. This ongoing experience has led her to understand how much personal power we have over our lives. Currently, Dara mentors other Reiki and energy practitioners to reach their greatest potential. Her passions are mindfulness, using photography and writing, and she's in the process of writing a book about her own transformation with the hope of inspiring others to become purposeful sculptures of their own lives. So I am excited to introduce Dara now. Hi, how are you? Uh-oh, not hearing you again.
I was still on mute for your introduction.
Okay, so how are you?
I'm good. Thank you for having me on.
Great.
Yeah.
Well, I'm glad we got our audio issues solved so that we can have a show.
Me too. Yeah,
Technology.
I know. Yeah.
So to start out with, can you tell us a little bit more about yourself and what led you to your current path?
Sure. I had severe Crohn's disease and severe PTSD for decades. And it basically controlled my life. It controlled what I was able to do and what I wasn't able to do. And most of my energy in life was spent managing both those two things and strategizing for how I could live some semblance of a normal life while dealing with PTSD and Crohn's disease. And, you know, as far as the Crohn's disease goes, it wasn't always the worst that it could be. It was kind of up and down. I would manage for a while and then I would crash and burn. And there were some times, you know, where I would have months or even a year that it was very carefully managed and I was able to go about my day-to-day life as long as I continued to manage it. But there were other times when I was so ill that I couldn't get out of bed. I've had surgeries. I was being seen at the University of Chicago, which is the center in the world for these kinds of things. And I had experimental treatments, and I was in clinical trials and on immune suppressant drugs. I had surgeries. There was one time where, there were several times when I weighed 45 pounds less than I do now, and I'm relatively thin now. And I came home from the hospital with a PICC line in my chest, and that was the only way that I could take nourishment for a long time. And, you know, as a single mother with 3 kids and no help, you know, I can remember 2 days after coming home from the hospital with a PICC line in my chest and having to crawl from the bed to the floor while my 9-year-old daughter takes care of her 7-year-old and 5-year-old siblings, and just feeling like, you know, this is my life. And as far as PTSD goes, I scored 65 out of 80, which is very severe. I got a lot of therapy. I tried different medications. I was very vigilant about applying the therapies that I got. And my therapists would say things like, oh, you should be grateful because most people can't manage to leave the house with your level of PTSD. And I wasn't grateful. I wasn't grateful that this was my life. And so this was just kind of a constant struggle. And, you know, there were times when it was better and I was able to kind of rebuild my life, but eventually one or the other would crash and burn. And, you know, it was like this constant pulling myself back together and rebuilding. But, you know, I eventually reached a point where I was just so exhausted with struggling with this for so long. And I had recently moved back to the US to take care of my dad who was dying. And after he died, I had another crash and burn situation. And I just couldn't do it anymore. And it wasn't that it was worse than it had ever been. I was just exhausted. And I felt like um, I couldn't continue to do this anymore. You know, I looked at the years stretching ahead of me and I just was in such despair and such exhaustion that I just couldn't do it. And I made a plan to commit suicide. And I was in the process of putting my money into a trust for my kids and making sure that their stuff, I had it set up so it would be shipped to them. And, you know, that's kind of where I was at. That was the level of desperation that I was at that time.
Hmm. And
Yeah.
how long ago was that?
That was 6 years ago.
Oh my goodness.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
when did the health and PTSD issues actually begin?
So it's hard to say exactly when the PTSD began, but um, probably about 20 years ago. And I'm diagnosed with C-PTSD, which is complex PTSD,
Mhm.
which means that either a long-term situation or a series of events that occur as opposed to one single big event. And the Crohn's disease emerged about that time as well. Um, so actually, that was when my daughter was about a year old. She just is turning 34 today. So actually, it was about 30 some years ago. Yeah.
Yeah. So,
Yeah.
you kind of just described what your life was like
Mm-hmm.
during that. So, what treatments did you try prior to coming up with your, your own?
Well, I had experimental treatments. I was in clinical trials. As far as Crohn's disease goes, I had all the treatments that are available to a person, and many that aren't available because to most people, because I was at the University of Chicago where they do a lot of experimental treatment and clinical trials. And I did probably 15 or 20 years ago, before probiotics were a thing. I won't go into the series of amazing circumstances that led me to probiotics when nobody had ever heard of them, but I discovered that probiotics and changing the way that I ate would allow me to manage the Crohn's disease. That's what allowed me to get the Crohn's disease under control, though it was a constant management. As far as the PTSD, I've done medications, cognitive behavioral therapy, EMDR, exposure therapy, and all those things more than once with more than one therapist, both in the United States and in Canada. And through those therapies, I did learn to manage. I learned strategies to manage. And sometimes those strategies worked quite well. And I would be able to go for a relatively long period of time living kind of a normal life. And when I say kind of a normal life, when I moved to Canada, I didn't tell anybody what I had been through or what my story was, because I didn't want to be seen as a victim. I didn't want to be seen as a sick person. I just wanted to step into this new life, whether that was realistic or not. That's what I did. And I lived there for about 10 years, and I had some very close friends. And it wasn't until after I started this journey out of PTSD that I told a couple friends that I had had PTSD, and one that I'm quite close to. There was this long silence, and she says, "That explains so much. We all thought you were just really eccentric," and uh, it doesn't surprise me that I appeared that way because, would have to kind of go through some elaborate things sometimes in order to leave my house, or places I couldn't go, things I couldn't do, or things that I could do a month ago, but now tonight I can't do it. So yeah, I guess I did seem quite
Mm,
eccentric in my ability to in my attempt to look normal.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, what was the catalyst or the thing that inspired you to, try your own approach?
It was another accidental bit of serendipity. I was in the process of putting things together so that I could leave as little of a mess as possible. And, like I said, I had made arrangements to put my money into a trust for my kids, and to ship my kids' mementos and stuff to Chicago, where a couple of them live, and was just in the process of doing the things that I needed to do. And, you know, I was so desperate for this to be over that a lot of times the only way that I could keep going today, the only way I could not kill myself today, was by reminding myself that I could always change my mind tomorrow and not complete these tasks. I could always change my mind tomorrow, but today I'm gonna, keep moving on these things that I wanted to get done before. And sometimes that wouldn't work. And so I would turn on very technical lectures on YouTube or UCTV, University of California TV, because if it was fairly complicated and I had to really pay attention, it would take my mind off the despair. And so one time when I was doing this, I came upon a very dry lecture about how neurons hardwire, and they were using a flatfish neuron. And I could see on the screen in living color how repeated events or repeated thoughts hardwire your brain until um, your brain is no longer responding to a stimuli. It's just continually firing in the same way, same way, same way, same way. And then I won't go into the whole thing, but eventually this neuron had turned into this tangled ball of self-firing neurons. It looked like an electrical explosion or something was continually happening. And he said, and so now this will continue even without the stimulus, and there's nothing that can be done to stop it. And I thought, oh my God. He said, drugs can suppress it. Therapies can modify it and help a person learn to live with it, but there's nothing we can do to make it stop. And I thought, wow, there you go. And he said, and that but rings in my head, but he says, we can teach it to do something different. And what I found through watching them stimulate those neurons differently is that at first it didn't seem to do anything, but eventually it retaught the neuron to not do that. And, it's kind of a long and complex story, but suddenly I realized that I had been being told all this time by, my Crohn's disease doctors and by my PTSD therapist that there was no cure for these things, that this could not be fixed, it could only be modified. And I had seen on the screen right there that they had changed that neuron. And I thought, I can do this. And the key too was that they said on in this lecture that the key was you can't just do a different stimulation a couple times a day and then think the same thoughts, because they were talking about obsessive compulsive disorder, anxiety disorder, PTSD, all these compulsive repetitive thought disorders. They said people go to therapy and they go to therapy for an hour a week, and then they may, do the therapeutic behaviors an hour a day, but all the rest of their waking time, their brain is continuing to churn this, and so you don't really get anywhere. And so I decided that I was going to quit working, and I was going to spend every moment finding a way to think different thoughts every moment of the day. And that's what I did. And I started looking for everything that I could find about rewiring your brain and how to think different thoughts. And it's very difficult when you have a compulsive thought disorder like PTSD, because your brain is thinking your thoughts. You're no longer in control of your brain. And so I just tried every technique that I could find, and the ones that worked, the ones that gave me some relief, I continued doing. And I did it all the time. And I even would listen to inspirational stuff through headphones all the time, and my brain would turn its attention back to whatever it was used to doing for all these years. And I would notice it, and I'd bring my attention back, and I'd bring my attention back. And I noticed that a lot of suggestions had been things that have worked, for time immemorial. Gratitude. I started writing gratitude lists, which you talk about a lot. I started walking and noticing everything that was beautiful. And I came upon one technique that was to get um, easy buttons from Staples. You hit it and it goes, that was easy. And I put easy buttons everywhere. And every time something was easy or not frightening or didn't turn out as bad as my brain said it was going to turn out, I hit the easy button. I even had an easy button on the dashboard of my car, and I still do, just because I think it's fun. And what I learned through that, I started hitting the easy button every time the light was green. And what I noticed is the lights are almost always green, but I only notice the very few that are red. And that was mind opening to me, was that I was not paying attention to everything that was absolutely fabulous.
Mhm.
So I also started walking and photographing, and I noticed I could pay more attention and keep my mind on what was beautiful and off the churning thoughts in my head if I took photographs. And I started noticing that I was even more engaged and more mindful if it was photographs of things that were really tiny. And so that's how my photography started. And, after all these years of therapy, it only took me a few weeks to start noticing a difference. The first real difference that I had ever had, as opposed to mitigating what was going on in my head.
Okay, well, as your friend said, that explains a lot.
Yeah.
So, what was as you started to recover, what were your thoughts on that, and what was that process like?
It transformed everything that I believed about life. It transformed the way that I thought. It transformed the way that I interacted with life. Because what I realized is that I had gotten to a point, and I've come since then to realize that that's kind of a societal issue, where I only noticed what was wrong, and I only noticed what was unwanted, similar to, and this is separate from PTSD, but similar to only noticing the red lights. I know that was what caught my attention. And I part of the thing that I did during this process, which was super important, was that I stopped listening to anything negative. And I'd already not had a TV for 10 years, but I didn't listen to the news at all. I didn't look up anything negative. It was all positive coming in. And then when I kind of slowly, probably a year later, started to reintegrate some of that stuff into my life, I was able to have such a bigger world view, because I now had retrained my brain to notice all the stuff that was good and wanted and wonderful, in addition to the things that were unwanted. And so that has put a completely different perspective on my life, how I move through the world, how I think about the global picture.
Yes.
Um,
So, what's your life like now that, you know?
It's absolutely transformed. It's just absolutely transformed. I live what I oftentimes now call an and life instead of an or life. Even before PTSD, I lived an or life. Things were either going the way I wanted or they weren't. And, how I felt depended on whether or not things external to me were going the way I wanted them to go. Um, I was really controlled by outside forces, and I was controlled by little things. And so um, now things things don't always go the way that I want them. Things are not always, the way I would choose to have them be, not only in my personal life, but in the external world as well. Things I can control, things I can't control, don't always go my way. But what I recognize now is that when something unwanted is occurring in my life, I have a fabulous life. And I have this thing over here that's occurring that I don't want. And it's the same thing with the societal situation or global situation. There are many things that are unwanted about the world that I live in. And I live in a fabulous, wonderful world filled with fabulous, wonderful people. And that's such a shift for me. I have gone from kind of being micro focused on what's wrong or what's right if it, is going my way, to having more of a global focus and a long-term focus and feeling like I can just, move through the world easily and be present and be aware. Yeah.
So those easy buttons are still there.
Yeah.
Okay, good. So, is this kind of transformation, do you think it's possible for anyone?
I know it's possible for anyone. I absolutely know it's possible for anyone. Um, there was nothing particularly special about me before I made this transformation that allegedly is not possible, that goes against all the textbooks. There was nothing special about me except that I was desperate enough to do it, to actually do what I needed to do. And in my work as a Reiki master and helping people to learn to change their energy, I've come to be so deeply steeped in the awareness of the mind-body connection, whether we're talking about transforming our health or whether we're talking about transforming the way we think and perceive the world and are affected by the world. Anybody can do this. It's just a matter of will we? You know, it's very seductive to keep chasing that pill that's going to change things or that next self-help book that's going to change things. And what I've come to find is that people who are willing to actually do the internal work can transform their lives very quickly. Because, like I said, it was only a few weeks when I started to notice the first real relief that I had had in decades. And I came into Reiki then kind of accidentally through the back door. During that process, I found a Reiki master named Maureen Ravel, who guided me through that process and, really helped me to understand the connection between the energy I generate through my thoughts, feelings, my conversations, and how that affects my body. And since then, I've done a lot of research on the mind-body connection from a neurobiological standpoint, and it's really easy to understand how our thoughts and our reactions, either upregulate our healing process or downregulate our immune system. So yeah, anybody can do this. Yeah, yeah,
I agree.
yeah.
So, what are your current goals and aspirations?
My current goals and aspirations. I would love to travel in a little camper van and just take pictures and write about how fabulous things are. That is my current aspiration, to find my way there. In the meantime, I do work with people who are interested in learning how to change their own energy, whether we're talking about the energy that we speak of in doing energy work and Reiki, but that all starts up here in the head and transforming the way we think and respond. And so I mentor people who are interested in learning how to do that for themselves. I don't do so much work anymore where people come to me wanting kind of with a Western modality, fix me, but I'm always happy to work with people who are interested in learning how to heal themselves and evolve themselves. Yeah.
Well, I'd love to see that series, Dara and the Little Camper Van.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
What has in your life now, since you've gone through this transformation, what is your current biggest challenge?
My current biggest challenge is that there is so much fabulous, exciting, wonderful things that I want to do that I can't pack it all in. And sometimes it's very difficult for me to focus on one thing because there's so much fabulousness out there, and that is a transformation for me, but it's also a challenge. Yeah. Yeah.
I totally understand.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
what's the biggest reward or aha that you've gotten from everything that you've gone through?
I think the biggest reward is the realization of how powerful we are, what powerful beings we are. Uh, before I saw that UCTV lecture, I was convinced that I had no power or no control. That because that's what everybody told me. This isn't curable. You'll never be well. You should be grateful as well as you are. You do better with this than most people do. I felt powerless in the face of my own body's health and well-being. And, um, I had given my agency over to professionals who certainly do the best they can. But a huge aha moment was realizing that we're just so much more powerful than we think we are. And we have personal power that we can apply to all areas of our lives. And I'm not saying people shouldn't take a pill or do therapies. I mean, I have a doctor. I was just at my Western medicine doctor today. But the biggest healing that can happen is dependent on our own selves. Yeah.
Yeah, I wouldn't want to discount the, contribution of Western medicine either, but to, as you said, blindly hand ourselves over and
Mhm.
uh, not take responsibility for our own health
Mhm.
is I think a mistake for anybody, no matter
Yeah.
what.
Yeah. We don't realize how much power we have over our own health and well-being. We just don't realize it. Yeah.
Yes. So, tell us a little bit about the book that you're writing. What is that going to be, and what do you hope to, accomplish by writing it?
I am writing a book because I want to write a book as opposed to what I hope to accomplish. What I tend to do nowadays is do what inspires me and see what happens. And generally wonderful things happen. Just stuff drops in and drops in and drops in. It's like little breadcrumbs that I follow. And so I'm writing the book because two things, so that people can realize how much power that they have, and people can realize that just your everyday average person can transform their lives. I want people to know that that's a journey that's possible, and it's not only possible for somehow special anointed people. I want people to know that personal transformation is based on the actual effort and actions that you take, as opposed to the number of things that you think about. I want people to go, I can take that action and get that result. You know, I want people to realize that anybody can do it. Yeah.
Great. And one thought actually that you inspired by telling your story is that, as you said, it's a very, it's a process that anybody and everybody can go through, because it's a very natural process. It's a process of, becoming more self-aware and getting to know and accept yourself, better.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's not something, magical that, we have to search for the secret to. Although, knowing yourself does feel like you've discovered a secret.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's a kind of a magic that's ordinary.
Yeah. Ordinary magic. That's a good way to put it. Yes. Yes.
So, this question is kind of off topic, but I've been asking all my guests for a while. So, what has surprised you most about life so far?
What surprised me most about life is how many stories we tell ourselves, and how many stories we tell each other, and how many stories that society tells us that aren't true, that just aren't true. What surprised me is how simple and easy life can flow when I let go of all the stories that I tell myself. Yeah. Yeah. When I let go of what's not me, and what's me is pretty awesome. I used to think I was the one who was as my friend Mickey says, bad, broken, and wrong. But what I've discovered is that the things about me that didn't work weren't me. Those things weren't me. And even all those compulsive thoughts in my head that are the hallmark of PTSD, that wasn't me. That was my brain, an organ in my body. So who am I? I'm the one who's listening to those thoughts. I had lost the knowledge, or maybe never had the knowledge, that I had the ability to direct those thoughts instead of being, subjected to those thoughts. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, that's the biggest surprise. Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely. And that's why kind of going back and finding that child that you were, right in the beginning, before
Yes.
all of the
Yeah.
stories and,
That's how I see myself very much now, is I have really returned to who I was as a small child, which is who I really am. And then the stories and the stuff gets stuck to us, and I've shed a lot of that. I still have more to shed. We never get done. There's always more to become.
totally.
Yeah.
I've learned that a few times.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, and we're getting close to the end of our time. If listeners could take one thing away from today's show, what would you want that to be?
You are powerful beyond your awareness. You are powerful beyond your knowing. Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
Wise words. So, if people wanted to get in contact with you or find out more, about what you do or learn?
I am, they can reach me through Facebook, Dara Wagner, or Instagram, The Mindful Lens. And in a couple weeks, my website will be up, which is themindfullens.com.
Great. And she
Yeah.
does absolutely amazing
hmm
photography. So
Yeah. And hopefully next year when our lockdowns are completely over, we'll go back to Mindful Lens workshops, which are wonderful. Yeah.
yes. So I do have a quote for you to carry with you
Okay.
through your week. Not well, you can carry it too, but for the listeners,
hmm
because you actually already know that this is true. But trauma is hell on earth. Trauma resolved is a gift from the gods.
hmm
And that was said by Peter A. Levine.
hmm
So we have another great show planned for next week. And next week, my guest will be Dr. Larissa Ciprina. And Dr. Larissa she's a happiness and positivity coach, as well as an ESL and culture coach. And she helps immigrants to adapt to their new home countries and helps them with attitude, positivity, happiness. And so we'll talk to her about that and, why she does what she does. And that'll be 3 p.m. next Tuesday. And that is actually the 18th. So tune in for that. Thank you again, Dara, for being here and talking about this.
Oh, thank you for having me. Yeah.
It's been a pleasure.
Yeah.
And I'm just going to say bye for now.
All right.
Thank you for listening to Soul Fire Wisdom with Kate Olson. We hope you enjoyed the show. If we made you laugh, brightened your day, or sparked a new thought, we have succeeded in our mission. Join us next time when we'll share more secrets and truths and all the magic of transformation that is the journey to Soul Fire Wisdom. Always remember, be fierce in the pursuit of what sets your soul on fire.